Okay, kiddies. And this chapter is chapter 14, Boston. Lewis goes to Boston. Do anybody remember what Lewis was going to Boston for? He was going to get a job. Here's Lewis, traveling light. Can anybody name everything that Lewis has got on his neck? Go ahead. Yep, that's right. Yeah. Oh, I knew you would forget one. So he's got the trumpet. He's got the slate. He's got the chalk. He's got the life-saving medal. And the one thing you forgot? His bag of money. Yep. That's what he's going to Boston for, to get a job so he can make money. Does anybody remember why he needs money? It will be obvious by the end of the chapter, so pay attention. Boston. Lewis liked Boston the minute he saw it from the sky. Far beneath him was a river. The river was around a park, and the park had a lake in it. And in the middle of the lake there was an island called Turtle Island. Who would have thunk? Tied up next to the dock on the island there was a boat shaped like a swan. What? A boat shaped like a swan? But in the back the swan was hollow, had a big open hole in it. The place looked beautiful. There was a very nice hotel and a restaurant there. Lewis circled the place twice and glided down and splashed to a stop in the lake. Several ducks swam up to look him over. He was a sight. No one ever saw anything like that. The park was called the Public Garden, and everyone in Boston knew about it and went there to sit in the sun and walk around, feed the pigeons and the squirrels, and to ride the swan boat. A ride cost 25 cents for grown-ups, 15 cents for children. After he rested a little bit from flying and had a bite to eat, Lewis swam over to the dock and climbed out onto the shore. And the man who was taking tickets for the swan boat looked surprised to see an enormous white swan wearing all this stuff around his neck. "Hello," said the boatman. Lewis lifted his trumpet and "Go!" he replied. Well, at that sound, every bird in the park looked up. The boatman jumped. The Boston people, as far as a mile away, looked up and said, "What was that?" No one had ever heard a trumpeter swan. The sound made a big impression. People eating a late breakfast at the hotel looked up from their food, and the waiters and the waitresses and the bellboy said, "What was that?" Well, the man in charge of the swan boat was probably the most surprised man in Boston. He looked at Lewis's trumpet, his money bag, his life-saving medal, his slate, and his chalk pencil. He says, "Phew, what do you want, Lewis?" He asked Lewis what did he want. He didn't know his name was Lewis at this point. And Lewis wrote down on the slate, "Have trumpet, need work." Lewis was a man of few words. It was pretty rough writing on that thing, the chalkboard with a pen. "Okay," said the boatman, "you've got yourself a job. A boat leaves here in 5 minutes for a trip around the lake. Your job will be to swim in front of the boat, leading the way and blowing your horn." "How much money are you going to pay me?" said Lewis. "We'll settle that later," said the boatman. "Let's just call this a tryout and see how you do." Lewis nodded his head. He arranged all the things neatly around his neck, went into the water, and got in front of the boat and waited. He wondered, how would the boat go? He didn't see any outboard motor, and there were no oars. In the front part of the boat there were benches for the people to sit, and in the back there was a big hollowed-out swan-looking thing. And inside it was a seat, like a bicycle seat, and there were 2 pedals like the inside of a bicycle. Well, when all the passengers were aboard, a young man appeared, and he climbed into the back and got down inside the swan and began to pedal. And splash, 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 a paddle wheel goes around, and he starts to paddle around the lake. Here's what this looks like. This is something you got to see. If I can get it there. You see in the back, over here, there's the boy sitting inside the boat, and there's all the people getting ready to ride the boat. This is a reversed image. It's kind of a rough thing to do. Well, the boatman threw the lines off, and the boat slowly moved out into the lake. Lewis led the way, swimming with his left foot, holding the trumpet with his right foot. "Go!" said Lewis's trumpet. The wild sound rang loud and clear and stirred everyone's blood. Then, realizing he should play something appropriate, Lewis played a song that he heard at the camp that the boys were playing. "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream." Singing is extra on this. The swan boat passengers were beside themselves with joy. Here was a real live swan playing a trumpet. Life was a dream, all right. What a lark, what fun, what pleasure. "This is real groovy," cried a boy from the front seat. "That bird is as good as Louis Armstrong, the famous trumpet player. I'm going to call him Louis." When Louis heard this, he swam alongside the boat. He took his chalk pencil in his mouth and he wrote, "That's actually my name." "Hey, how about that?" yelled the boy. "This swan can write too. Louis can write. Let's give him a cheer." And the passengers all cheered and clapped, and Louis swam ahead of the boat, and slowly and gracefully the boat circled the island, while Louis played "Gentle on My Mind" on his trumpet, and another song. And it was a lovely September morning, hazy and warm. The trees were beginning to show their autumn colors, and the leaves were falling, and Louis played "Old Man River." When the swan boat docked and the passengers got off, long lines of people were waiting to get on the next ride. They were curious. Business was booming. Another boat was even made ready to accommodate all the crowds. Everyone wanted to ride the swan boat behind a real live swan playing a trumpet. This was the biggest thing that happened in Boston since that Tea Party. People like strange events, and Boston was no exception. And the swan boat with Louis out front leading the way suddenly became the most popular attraction in Boston. "You're hired," said the boatman when Louis climbed out onto the bank. "With you playing the trumpet, I can double my business. I can triple my business. I can get all my business I want. I'll give you a steady job." Louis lifted his slate and said, "How much money?" The boatman looked around, looked at all the crowds of people. He said, $100 a week. I'll pay you $100 every Saturday if you'll swim ahead of the boat and play your hotel horn. Is that a deal?" Louis nodded his head, and the man seemed pleased, but then he wondered, "If it isn't too much to ask," said the boatman, "would you mind telling me why you're so interested in money?" And Louis took his chalk out and said, "Everybody is." "Yeah, I know," said the boatman. "Everybody likes money. It's a crazy world. But I mean, why would a swan need money? You can get your meals just by dipping down and pulling up tasty plants at the bottom of the lake. What do you need money for?" Louis erased his slate and he wrote down, "I'm in debt," which means he owes money to somebody. And he thought about his poor father who had stolen the trumpet, and about the poor storekeeper in Billings, Montana, who had his window broken and he was robbed. And Louis knew he must go on earning money until he could pay off all the damages and what he owed for the trumpet. "Okay," said the boatman, addressing the crowd. "This swan says he's in debt. All aboard for the next ride." And he began selling tickets. Well, the boatman owned several boats, all of them shaped like swans. Pretty soon every boat was full and the money was pouring in. All day long, the swan boats circled the lakes, carrying their load of happy people. Many of them are children. Louis played his trumpet like he never played before. He loved his job, and he loved to entertain people, and he loved the music, and the boatman was very happy. He was making a lot of money. When the day was over and the boat made their last trip, the boatman walked over to Louis, who was standing on shore arranging his things. "You've done great," said the boatman. "You're a great swan. I wish I had you long ago. And where are you planning on spending the night?" "Here on the lake," Louis wrote on his chalkboard. Well, I don't know about that, the man said. A lot of people are curious about you. They might make trouble for you. The bad boys might come and try to harass you. I don't trust people who hang around this park at night. I don't want to lose you. I think I'll take you across to the hotel and get you a room for the night. It's clean and the food is good, and you'll be safe there. And that way you'll be sure to come to work in the morning. Lewis didn't think much of this idea, but he said, well, I'm in Boston. I better do what he says. He thought, I've never spent a night in a hotel. It might be an interesting experience. So he walked along with the boatman, and they left the park, crossed the street, and went into the front of the hotel. It had been a long day for Lewis, but he felt relieved that a good job he had, and he could make a lot of money in Boston as a musician. And here's Lewis and the boatman going into the hotel. Pretty funny, huh? And that's the end of that chapter.